All right, an updated version of Zach's top 50 Dynasty wide receivers. We did this video about a little over 2 months ago now, but a lot has changed. We're going to see what has changed.
Yeah, tier 1, CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase.
Sure.
That's the big three. F the big three. Let's talk about the big four. Amon-Ra St. Brown.
I was literally about to say, I think we should start having a conversation about Amon-Ra. And I thought that you were just going to be like, all nonchalant about it.
It's the big me. But look, Amon-Ra's got to be in there, man.
I think so as well.
If you are a young wide receiver,
I think so.
Who just signed a huge contract, connected to a quarterback that just gave you a top 20 season, why are we overthinking this? Why the hell are we overthinking this? The guy just averaged over 20 points per game. And he just signed a long-term deal with Jared Goff, who did the same. I mean, Amon-Ra, he's the focal point of that offense. He's going to get peppered with targets. I don't see a reason not to have a guy who could reach 170 targets every year in tier 1. It just makes no sense to me. And like when I did my projections this year, I actually have Amon-Ra outscoring Justin Jefferson.
Yeah. Okay. That's good. That's good to know, because that was going to be my next conversation here. Justin Jefferson.
Not by much. Not by much. But
I understand, right? I think all these guys are your pillar guys, your pillar foundational wide receivers in your dynasty team that you've been drafting in either the first or second round, maybe in a super flex startup. Because I know a lot of people are going to be doing startups in the start-off season currently right now. How confident are you in drafting Justin Jefferson right now? Because I think the biggest conversation is if Sam Darnold is shit, like he always has been, and if J.J. McCarthy is not the quarterback that we hope and expect, Justin Jefferson could be the new Garrett Wilson, right? Like he could be like, he has all the potential.
I wouldn't go that far, but I hear
Do you get the conversation that I'm trying to have here? Yeah.
So Justin Jefferson's always going to be good. You know, you can look at the numbers last year without Kirk Cousins and splits. You know, he was still averaging over, I think, 17 points per game.
I think so.
That's good. But that's not like the 21 point per game Justin Jefferson that we know, right? That made him the wide receiver 1 for so long. But
is that tier 1 Justin Jefferson though?
I still think he's tier 1, but here's what I'll say. Like the way I'm approaching startup drafts is I'm not taking Jefferson in round 1. I'm taking quarterback round 1, Amon-Ra round 2.
Sure.
That's the way, like if you're on the edge, if you're like 110, 111, 112, quarterback, then Amon-Ra. Let someone else take Jefferson. It's not anti-Jefferson. He's on track to be the best receiver we've ever seen.
No question.
Right?
No question.
So I'm not going to be worried about him in Dynasty. And I also think the system that Kevin O'Connell runs is very friendly towards Justin Jefferson. They're going to find ways to get him the ball. But I just brought that as an argument as to like why are we not putting respect on Amon-Ra? I think it's finally time.
And I completely agree here. And the last thing I'll say, at least from my perspective on this, I will not be surprised if Justin Jefferson, not in your rankings, but in a lot of people's rankings in the community, is tier 2 because of the performance that we might see coming into this year.
Are you saying you're projecting this in a year's time, it wouldn't surprise you, or right now? Because right now that would surprise me.
In a year's time, it would not surprise me that he isn't. Maybe you have CeeDee Lamb, Jamar Chase, and Amon-Ra, and Justin Jefferson is a first wide receiver in tier 2 because of the concerns moving forward about J.J. McCarthy, if that is the narrative here. But
I struggle to see it happening, but I guess anything is possible. I'm not going to sit here and say it's not possible.
Yeah. All right, take us to your next tier.
Tier 2, Marvin Harrison Jr., my wide receiver 5 in Dynasty right now. I've been really struggling with my wide receiver 6 and 7. It's been back and forth for a long time. Puka Nacua, Garrett Wilson. Man, it's so difficult between these two. I don't care which way you're going. I don't care if you prefer Garrett. I don't care if you prefer Puka. I think you can make an argument for both of these guys.
Sure.
I also have Malik Neighbors in this tier and A.J. Brown to finish it off. But with Puka, it's like we've already seen him do it. And it's funny because the reason people are low on Puka and higher on Garrett Wilson, their argument typically has been, well, who knows how long Matthew Stafford has left? I'm sorry. Your quarterback is Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
So how long does Aaron Rodgers have left? So I get both perspectives, but
I think it's the conversation more around Puka Nacua had tremendous success without Cooper Kupp. And Cooper Kupp is still part of this offense. Sure. And
long term though in Dynasty, we should
sure.
Cooper Kupp shouldn't be someone that we're concerned about. I don't.
Yeah, and I completely agree there. I think that I'm just saying that's what a lot of people's conversations and arguments are about. Malik Neighbors, very similar to Garrett Wilson. There's no one else in front of him. I think right now I currently have Puka Nacua behind Garrett Wilson and Malik Neighbors, just based off of Cooper Kupp and how we saw in the second half of the season when Cooper Kupp was on the field, we saw Puka Nacua take that step down in a points per game basis. But the long term, I think all these guys, once again, pick your poison because the success is going to be there.
I think Neighbors is going to have a fantastic year. I have him statted out to get 27% of the targets. That is potentially 140 to 150 targets range. Now, how many of those will be catchable targets? I don't know. You're right. It might be very much Garrett Wilson, first couple seasons with Daniel Jones back there.
All right, tier 3.
Yes, tier 3. Tyreek Hill, still one of the best receivers in the game, but he's over 30 years old at this point, right?
Sure.
So Drake London is there. Chris Olave is there. Nico Collins is the biggest mover since we last did this video. Jalen Waddle, and then Brandon Ayuk. With Nico Collins, but the last time we did this video, he didn't have a long-term contract with the team.
No, he didn't.
They had just brought in Stephon Diggs. There was a lot of questions on, is that an indication of maybe they're uncertain about Nico long-term? There's a lot of question marks, right?
There's a lot of question marks in this tier. I would say.
You also had to ask the question, well, is Nico going to be able to produce with Stephon Diggs there? Is Diggs going to be able to produce? What does that mean for Tank Dell?
Sure.
Anyway, they made it very clear their intentions with Nico Collins, giving him that long-term contract. So that puts him in this tier pretty comfortably for me. I do prefer him over Jalen Waddle. I don't see Jalen Waddle ever being the wide receiver 1 unless Tyreek is gone. I do think Nico can be the wide receiver 1 for the Houston Texans, connected to CJ Stroud. Mm-hmm. And again, in the community right now, you can tier down from Waddle to Nico. That might just be a simple pick swap. That means you get a second and you send a third. But that to me is well worth doing because I already prefer Nico, even though the community is opposite sides of that coin. But I like this tier, just guys that you want to build around, I think.
Let's talk about Brandon Ayuk right now because there's a lot of things happening around with Brandon Ayuk in the community, or I guess in real life, as you can say. If Brandon Ayuk does leave, and we kind of hinted at this in another video, I don't see his value, at least for me, his value either rising or me feeling more comfortable with Brandon Ayuk's situation. There's 2 teams that he mentioned, your Washington Commanders and the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah.
Based off quarterback play, one is a rookie, the other one is Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. I don't feel comfortable.
That video that you're talking about was the redraft channel in Dynasty. If he were to go to Washington,
yes, it was redraft.
I actually would really love that. I prefer him in Washington and Dynasty, as crazy as that sounds.
Okay.
And that's just because I do think he gets 140 plus targets a year in Washington. Like last year, on a per target basis, one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. Mm-hmm. But he only had 104 targets. He was 37th. We talked about this in that video. Jacoby Myers had more targets last year than Brandon Ayuk. Tyler Lockett had more targets. David Njoku and Trey McBride had more targets. So I think Ayuk is one of the better receivers in the game. But if he goes to Pittsburgh, I'm not in love with it. But if he goes to Washington, I am, because he's got that connection long term. I think Jane Daniels is a better passer than people give him credit for. So
I think my main concern with Washington specifically, and I kind of hinted this on the live stream, I'm not saying that Terry is a better talent. I just don't think he goes away. And he does have that long-term contract extension. Terry also demands 130 targets. We have seen 2 wide receivers.
Okay. That's totally fine because guess what? Now you're competing with Terry McLaurin. I'd much rather compete with Terry McLaurin than CMC, Kittle, Debo, what Pearsall might be, right?
That's fair.
So I want a bigger piece of the targets, a bigger piece of the pie. I might not be as efficient. I might not be on on one of the best offenses in the NFL, but I just want more reliability from a week-to-week basis.
Okay. I think my next guy I do want to talk about, which I've spoken about, I would say in nauseum in the community really quickly, is Chris Olave. I get it. This new offense is going to be exciting. There's a new leaf turning over. My concern is the quarterback position. It's not the player. It's the situation. I'm concerned about Chris Olave because I see the people in tier 4 that you haven't even mentioned as of yet have a better chance of finishing over Chris Olave because of their situation. And I
Okay.
think we at the moment are drafting him at his peak value, where we could potentially be getting him at a cheaper
Yeah.
price next year. Once
Yeah.
again,
So
based off situation.
a guy who's averaged 25 or more percent of the targets over his first 2 years, very good indication of what he means to this team. And you constantly talk about the quarterback play, which I understand. I constantly talk about the offensive coordinator change because I think it's something that we're overlooking. Coming over from the San Francisco offense, Clint Kubiak, I think, and they have talked about this, getting Olave the ball in much easier ways. If you watch Saints games last year,
Oh, he's
how many targets downfield were inaccurate to
hey
Chris
Chris,
Olave?
just run down the field. I'll try and get it to you.
Get the ball in his hands, design plays, much easier ways to get him involved in the offense.
I know, and I understand, and I think for me this is a make or break season. He has to at least finish as a top. For me, it's top 15 wide receiver to then trust. He's finished as a wide receiver of 19 in a points per game basis. And I'm talking about in a points per game basis, okay? Not in a fantasy finish. In a points per game basis, I am hoping that if Chris Olave finishes at the top 15 wide receiver, I can see the pathway. But if he finishes outside of that, I'm truly concerned. All right, take us to your tier 4 then.
Tier 4, DJ Moore, who I love, Roma Dunze. It just didn't feel right putting a Dune. It feels wrong having a Dunze.
In a different tier than DJ?
No, what I was going to say is it feels wrong having a Dunze 2 tiers behind Neighbors and Marvin.
Okay.
That does feel wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But it also feels wrong to put him in a tier with Ayuk, who just was like 9th in total yards amongst wide receivers. So I'm trying to find the right spot for him. I got Tank Dell here, Michael Pittman, Zay Flowers, DK Metcalf, Devonta Smith, and George Pickens in this tier. George Pickens is probably my strongest breakout candidate, guy I'll hit the drum for this year. So I am projecting a little bit for him. But if you look at Pickens last year on a per target basis, he was even better than Brandon Ayuk. Like, as crazy as that sounds, it's true. Go look at his per target basis, numbers. It's incredible. And now that there's no Deontay Johnson, who had 24% of the target share, I don't see how this guy isn't a 25 to 27% target share player. And if you give him that many targets, what could he do with it? And I just think he's going to break out. As far as DK Metcalf, I do think the more I project the Seattle Seahawks offense, the more I think about Ryan Grubb and what he's going to do in Seattle, the more comfortable I am with DK. And and yeah, I like this tier of players. I think they're all guys that you can build around still.
Yeah, I think so as well. I have no true concerns about anyone in this tier. I feel like you and I see pretty eye to eye, specifically on Michael Pittman, because I think a lot of people will argue that Michael Pittman's too low.
Should be higher.
He should be higher. You know, Anthony Richardson's there, and you saw what he did last year. Currently on Keep Trade Cut, wide receiver 19.
I got him 19.
Yeah, so I think
that's perfect.
It is perfect in the community, but I feel like a lot of people in the comments are like, Michael Pittman too low. You know, like Michael Pittman is not high enough. So I would agree in this tier 4, there's no true conversations I would like to have outside of one. And that is DJ Moore and Rome Odunze and how we potentially have to project these guys, because we know Keenan Allen is there, right? In a dynasty perspective, you're building from both of these two guys, but who do you want in the long term? Because DJ is here. He has the bag, and Rome Odunze. Is this just somebody, a team that you hope that's going to be a Nico Collins, Tank Dell, or DK and a Tyler Lockett, or an AJ Brown, Devonta Smith? Or do you see that gap potentially building like we see with AJ Brown and Devonta currently?
I think DJ is the number one still. I mean, he's proven it. He's done it in the NFL. I don't think we can undervalue that. I did have to slightly lower expectations for the entire Chicago Bear wide receiver room after doing my projections. Also, I did a video where we looked at historically if you can trust a rookie quarterback to produce fantasy finishes for your wide receivers, top 12, top 24, top 36. And I'll just say that it's about, I believe it's 29% of the time a rookie quarterback has produced a top 24 finish. 29% of the time. That's not a number I like to see. And considering DJ and Rome, they all have to share this backfield or this wide receiver room with a bunch of great names. I am lowering my expectations on the room as a whole.
Okay.
But I do still prefer DJ Moore simply because I don't think he's old. If people want to put that tag on him, they can. I don't think he's old. And we've already seen him be a dominant wide receiver in the NFL. So I think that's what you want from Rome Odunze eventually to be.
So with that being said, he's your wide receiver 2, you think, in the long term in this offense with DJ Moore.
I would not put that ceiling on him.
Okay.
I do think he could be the number one in this offense.
Okay. You do believe he can surpass DJ, but at the moment for this
DJ's
year,
already done it.
For this year specifically, maybe we can talk in the dynasty.
This year specifically, it won't be close. DJ will be the higher targeted player.
Okay.
It won't be close.
Okay, awesome. Okay, good to know, because I think that my concern right now with Rome is that I'm just a bit concerned with this long-term projection if this is going to be a Devonta Smith type of scenario. Like Devonta Smith, phenomenal talent coming out of college. He was a top 20 pick in the NFL draft. Rome Odunze, very similar, obviously top 10. He goes into a situation where he already
very
has
different players, but similar.
Very different players, similar draft capital, and I think similar situations, especially now with AJ Brown being there, right? DJ Moore as the AJ Brown to Rome Odunze. I think I'm a little bit concerned for Rome Odunze's future, but I'm still excited because of the talent that he can bring. Because he can just be a high-end wide receiver too, and I think maybe that's just good enough. But
I'll say this. DJ Moore is not as good as AJ Brown at their ceilings.
No, not at all.
And
You can see that here.
Devonta Smith, respectfully, is not as good of a prospect, in my opinion.
Than we thought.
Odunze is my
as Rome Odunze. Okay, sure. That's fair.
Devonta Smith has definitely played his part in the NFL. He's given the Eagles exactly what they drafted. But I think Odunze, in many drafts, would be the number one wide receiver drafted. Would be a top 10 pick, locked and loaded in almost every draft. And you had guys that we trust who had him as their number one wide receiver in this class. So I think there's a difference. DJ Moore is not AJ Brown, and I think Rome Odunze has a higher ceiling than Devonta Smith. So I definitely get the concern. I'm definitely concerned year one, but
long term,
there's no worries for me.
There's no worries. Okay, that's fair. All right, take us to your next tier then.
Tier 5. Just before we get into it, gotta let you know that if you want your team reviewed by us on a live stream, it's very simple. All you gotta do is use the promo code LAND and become a yearly Mother Flocker member.
That's right.
However, we also have another option for you now that we've introduced, which is the a la carte store. So in the pinned comment, you'll see 2 links. One is to become a member, where you get a free review for being a member. The other is the a la carte store. Regardless of what promo code you used at sign up, or even if you don't want to become a member and you just want to get a team review, you can go through the a la carte store and get that from the Land crew. Tier 5. A lot of names I really like in here.
Yes.
But I think there's pretty much question marks about every single one of these players, if I'm honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
Brian Thomas Jr., a player that the ceiling is really, really high, but needs to improve as a route runner. Is that going to translate straight away year one in Jacksonville?
Sure.
T. Higgins is never going to be the number one in Cincinnati. Where does he go in free agency next year? Does he stay in Cincinnati? Doesn't feel like it. Jordan Addison now joins a team that has no Kirk Cousins as the number 2, sometimes number 3 option behind Hawkinson. How much can we rely on that at this point? Ladd McConkey, I think he's going to be fantastic. But of course, there is a chance that he doesn't dominate year one. I think he will. He's a great route runner. He's set up to win day one. It's a run-first offense. What does that look like? JSN, terrible rookie year. Completely misused. Different offense now. Will he finally break out? Rashee Rice, stop buying pizza. You don't need to. All right?
Stop buying pizza.
You did the crime. Maybe you'll have to do some time. Xavier Worthy.
But I'm not a rapper.
What can he be in this offense? Is he the next Tyreek Hill or the next Hollywood Brown? Jaden Reed. Is he really the number one? It feels like it. But there's a lot of good receivers in Green Bay. It's just constant question marks across the board in tier 5.
Yeah, this tier 5, I completely agree with you. I don't really have any questions, and we can just continue to the next tier and take us to your tier 6.
Tier 6, just straight veterans and a couple rookies.
Okay.
It's a lot of vets and a couple rookies kind of mixed in there. This is the point where it's like, what is the direction of your team? You want to win right now, or are you rebuilding and you want to get some younger players?
Yeah.
Deebo Samuel, Mike Evans, Terry McLaurin, Devontae Adams, Amari Cooper, Calvin Ridley, Deontay Johnson, Stephon Diggs. Vets that can help you win right here, right now. Ricky Pearsall, Xavier Legette, Keon Coleman. You and I have been very vocal about we don't think Keon Coleman's the number one wide receiver in Buffalo this year.
Yes.
That's probably why he's lower in my rankings than the average person. Xavier Legette has a long way to go as a route runner, but fun player to kind of bet on. Ricky Pearsall is one trade away from drastically improving his value.
Oh, boy. Yeah, I mean,
so
that's crazy.
What direction do you want to take your team? Because there's good value here. You just got to sort through it.
Yeah, all depends on how many starters you have, maybe how many flex options you have, and then you can get rookies or some veterans here. All right, tier 7.
Yes, tier 7, Christian Kirk, Jalen Polk, Christian Watson, Cooper Kupp, Chris Godwin, Jermaine Burton, Troy Franklin, Hollywood Brown, Dontavion Wicks.
Oh, boy. Be careful.
We don't need to get into that conversation today, okay?
Please.
Jahan Dotson and Jameson Williams. Look, I want to make sure I say this, and there'll be plenty of people who don't actually watch the video and they just scroll through and they comment because they're angry about something. Tier 7 could be so much bigger. It could be so much bigger.
I'm about to say, you're missing somebody.
I don't care if you have 15 more names in this tier. We can only fit so many names on the graphic. So let's just throw some names out there, right? Josh Downs, Keenan Allen, Roman Wilson, Adonai Mitchell, Jalen McMillan, DeAndre Hopkins.
Go ahead.
Say
his name. Say his name.
Who are we missing?
Quentin Johnston.
Oh my God! I thought you were being serious. Are you being serious? I mean, I guess
no. It's a joke, but because I keep saying the wide receiver one is always available in drafts.
I just want to clarify. You can have as many names in here as your heart desires.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be upset about it. It's just the graphic can only fit so many names. So what the hell? Why is Adonai Mitchell not here? What the hell? Where the hell is fucking Josh Downs? Or
if you want the full list of rankings, guys, flogfantasy.com, brother. You can see past the 50.
Yes, you can see all the way to over 100. So, but anyway, it's just I'll talk about one player, Jermaine Burton.
Okay.
I think Jermaine Burton is one of my favorite values in Dynasty right now. And if you were to ask me who's the surprise producer this year,
okay,
there's no Puka Nacua. Okay. If there's a Jaden Reed, I think it's Jermaine Burton. A guy that kind of comes out of nowhere, second half of the season, not getting, a huge chunk of the offense, but a high percentage of touchdowns, shows to be an effective player, and we project him going into year 2 as an even better player than we projected him in his rookie season. Connected to a good quarterback. For me, he fits the bill as the next Jaden Reed.
Okay.
So, really excited about him. I think he can play all over the field for this team, in the slot, outside of T. Higgins moves on. He can play anywhere for them. And we've already seen him and Joe Burrow building some connection in the offseason.
Okay, that makes sense. And for me, that's Christian Watson.
Okay.
If he can string a 17-game season of being healthy, I can see him at least moving up into tier 5, arguably tier 4 at the end of tier 4. That's how
okay.
Excited I am for him. If he stays healthy. So I completely agree with a lot of these players. I love the list. I think it's phenomenal. I think there's great conversations. Anything else you want to say?
That's it. I mean, thanks for watching, guys. Hit the like button, subscribe. We'll see you in the next one. All love. Now that those idiots are done talking, who needs some rankings?
Hell yeah, I need some rankings.
Then use promo code LAND, LAND, for 30% off any membership at flockfantasy.com.
Oh.